The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base as Sarah Chun walked toward the training facility. Her footsteps echoed against the concrete, each step measured and purposeful. She had arrived at Naval Station Norfolk 3 days ago, but today marked her first official day as part of the integrated training program. The program was designed to test how well special operations personnel could blend into regular military units during specific missions. Sarah's dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her uniform bore the standard insignia of a petty officer, second class. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was anything more than another sailor reporting for duty. This was exactly how it was supposed to be. Her real identity as a Navy SEAL remained classified, known only to a handful of senior officers who had orchestrated this training exercise. The facility buzzed with activity as various units prepared for their morning drills. Sarah observed everything around her with the trained eye of someone accustomed to gathering intelligence quickly. She noted the positions of exits, the rhythm of foot traffic, and the general atmosphere among the personnel. Years of specialized training had made such observations second nature. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez stood near the main entrance, clipboard in hand, reviewing the day's training schedule. He was known throughout the base for his strict adherence to protocol and his no-nonsense approach to military discipline. Rodriguez had earned his reputation through 15 years of dedicated service, rising through the ranks by demanding excellence from both himself and those under his command. As Sarah approached the check-in area, she noticed Rodriguez's stern expression as he addressed a group of junior sailors. His voice carried across the courtyard, sharp and authoritative. Several sailors stood at attention, their postures rigid as they received what appeared to be a correction regarding their uniform standards. Sarah joined the line of personnel, waiting to receive their training assignments. The woman ahead of her shifted nervously, clearly intimidated by the lieutenant commander's presence. Sarah remained calm, her breathing steady and her expression neutral. She had faced far more challenging situations than a routine military check-in. When her turn came, Sarah stepped forward and saluted crisply. Rodriguez barely glanced at her as he flipped through the papers on his clipboard, searching for her name and assignment. His movements were efficient but dismissive, treating her as just another sailor in need of direction. Chun. Sarah, Petty Officer Second Class, she stated clearly. Maintaining her salute until he acknowledged her, Rodriguez found her paperwork and made a quick mark with his pen. He looked up briefly, his eyes scanning her uniform with the practiced gaze of someone checking for regulation compliance. Finding nothing obviously wrong, he handed her a training schedule and pointed toward a group of sailors gathering near the obstacle course. "Report to Chief Petty Officer Williams for combat readiness assessment," Rodriguez instructed. His tone clipped and professional. "Training begins in 15 minutes. Don't be late." Sarah accepted the papers and lowered her salute. "Yes, sir," she replied, turning to head toward the designated area. As she walked away, she could feel Rodriguez's gaze following her briefly before he turned his attention to the next sailor in line. The combat readiness assessment area was a flurry of activity. Chief Petty Officer Williams, a stocky man with graying hair, was organizing the sailors into groups based on their experience levels and specialties. Sarah noted that most of the participants appeared to be relatively junior personnel, likely selected for this training as part of their professional development. Williams approached Sarah as she joined the group. His manner was more approachable than Rodriguez's, though still professional. He reviewed her paperwork quickly and nodded approvingly at her fitness scores and previous training records. Of course, the records he was seeing were carefully crafted to reflect her cover identity, not her actual capabilities. "Looks like you've got solid fundamentals, Chun," Williams said, making notes on his roster. "We'll start you with the intermediate group and see how you handle the challenges. This assessment is designed to push everyone beyond their comfort zones." Sarah nodded respectfully. "I understand, Chief. I'm ready to do my best." Williams assigned her to a group of 8 sailors, a mix of men and women from various specialties within the Navy. As they introduced themselves, Sarah carefully constructed her cover story. presenting herself as a communications specialist with limited combat experience. The irony wasn't lost on her. Considering her actual background included some of the most advanced combat training available to military personnel, the first exercise involved a series of physical challenges designed to test strength, endurance, and problem-solving under pressure. Sarah had to consciously moderate her performance, ensuring she appeared competent but not exceptional. It was a delicate balance between maintaining her cover and not appearing incompetent to her fellow sailors. As the group moved through the obstacle course, Sarah found herself naturally falling into a rhythm that matched the capabilities of her teammates. She offered encouragement when appropriate and accepted help when it would maintain her cover. All while secretly assessing the tactical layout of the training area, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had moved to an observation position where he could monitor multiple training groups simultaneously. His attention was primarily focused on identifying sailors who might need additional support or those who showed exceptional promise for advanced training opportunities. From his vantage point, he watched Sarah's group navigate the obstacles. He made mental notes about each participant's performance, but Sarah's deliberately average showing didn't warrant any special attention. She was performing exactly as her fabricated records suggested she would. Competent, but unremarkable. The morning progressed with various exercises designed to simulate combat situations. Sarah found herself working closely with her assigned teammates, building the kind of rapport that would be expected in a real unit. She listened carefully to their conversations, gathering information about base operations and personnel that might be relevant to her actual mission. As the training session neared its midpoint, Chief Williams gathered all the groups for a briefing about the afternoon's activities. The exercises would become more intensive, incorporating elements of tactical decision-making and leadership under pressure. Sarah knew that maintaining her cover would become increasingly challenging as the scenarios grew more complex. Rodriguez joined Williams for the briefing, his presence adding a formal atmosphere to the proceedings. He emphasized the importance of following orders precisely and maintaining military bearing throughout all exercises. His words carried the weight of someone who had seen the consequences of poor discipline in real-world situations. Sarah stood among her fellow sailors, appearing to listen intently, while actually analyzing the training structure for any elements that might compromise her mission. The afternoon would bring new challenges, and she would need to remain constantly vigilant to maintain her carefully constructed identity while gathering the intelligence her superiors required. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the training grounds as the sailors prepared for the next phase of their assessment. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead, careful to show the same level of fatigue as her teammates. The morning's exercises had been demanding enough to tire most of the participants, but for someone with her conditioning, they had been merely a warm-up. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had been observing the training groups more closely during the lunch break. He moved between the various stations, reviewing performance notes with the instructors and identifying sailors who might benefit from different training tracks. His reputation for having a keen eye for detail meant that nothing escaped his attention for long. Chief Williams announced the afternoon's main event, a series of tactical scenarios that would test decision-making skills under pressure. The sailors would be divided into smaller teams and given missions to complete within strict time limits. Leadership roles would rotate, giving everyone a chance to command and be commanded. Sarah found herself assigned to Team Bravo, along with 3 other sailors: Petty Officer Johnson, a earnest young man from Mississippi; Seaman Martinez, a quick-thinking woman from California; and Petty Officer Third Class Thompson, a quiet but observant sailor from Maine. The team chemistry seemed positive, with each member bringing different strengths to the group. The first scenario placed them in a simulated hostile environment where they needed to retrieve important intelligence while avoiding enemy patrols. The training area had been set up with various obstacles, hiding places, and designated enemy positions marked by instructors with paintball weapons. Johnson was selected as the initial team leader, and Sarah watched as he struggled to develop a coherent strategy. His nervousness was evident as he studied the map provided by the instructors. Sarah wanted to offer guidance, but doing so too expertly would risk exposing her true capabilities. "Maybe we should approach from the east side," Johnson suggested hesitantly, pointing to what appeared to be the most obvious route. Sarah could immediately see that this path would expose them to multiple enemy positions, but she needed to find a way to redirect the team without revealing her tactical expertise. "I'm not sure about that approach," Martinez interjected, studying the terrain. "Looks like there might be too much open ground there." Sarah seized the opportunity to support Martinez's observation. "She's right. What if we swing around to the north? It looks like there might be more cover that way." Thompson nodded in agreement. "I noticed some drainage ditches on that side during our initial reconnaissance. They might provide concealment." Johnson considered their input and revised his plan accordingly. Sarah felt satisfied that she had contributed to better decision-making without standing out as unusually knowledgeable. The team moved out, following the modified route that would give them a much better chance of success from his observation post. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez tracked Team Bravo's progress through binoculars. He noted their initial hesitation and the collaborative way they had adjusted their approach. The team's performance appeared solid, if unspectacular, which was exactly what most training scenarios were designed to produce. As Team Bravo advanced through the course, they encountered their first simulated enemy patrol. Sarah had spotted the instructor playing the enemy role well before her teammates, but she waited for Thompson to make the observation since he was serving as the designated scout for this portion of the mission. "Contact ahead," Thompson whispered, pointing toward a cluster of equipment containers where an instructor waited with a paintball weapon. "Looks like one guard, but there could be others." Johnson called for a brief halt while the team considered their options. They could attempt to bypass the guard, create a distraction, or try to neutralize the threat directly. Each approach carried different risks and potential rewards within the context of the training. Scenario. Sarah found herself in the difficult position of knowing exactly what the best tactical approach would be while needing to appear as uncertain as her teammates. She contributed to the discussion by asking questions that might guide the team toward better decisions without providing the answers directly. "Do we know if there are any other guards in the area?" she asked, encouraging more thorough reconnaissance. "And what happens if we trigger an alarm?" Martinez added. Building on Sarah's line of thinking, the team decided to send Thompson forward for a closer look while the others remained in concealment. This was actually an excellent decision from a tactical standpoint, though it had emerged from their collective discussion. Rather than expert guidance, Thompson returned with valuable intelligence about the guard's patrol pattern and confirmed that he appeared to be alone in that section. The team developed a plan to time their movement during the guard's brief absence, allowing them to advance without confrontation. As they executed their plan, Sarah noticed Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had moved to a better observation position. His attention seemed focused on their team's performance, though she couldn't determine whether this was routine monitoring or something more specific had caught his interest. The mission continued with Team Bravo successfully, retrieving the simulated intelligence package from its designated location. However, their extraction route was complicated by additional enemy positions that hadn't been present during their initial advance. The instructors were clearly escalating the difficulty level to test the team's adaptability. Johnson was beginning to show signs of stress as the scenario became more complex. His commands became less clear, and Sarah could see that the team needed stronger leadership to complete their mission successfully. She faced a critical decision about how much guidance to provide without compromising her cover. "Sir, maybe we should reassess our route," she suggested to Johnson, using formal military protocol to show respect for his leadership position. "The situation seems to have changed since we came in." Martinez supported Sarah's suggestion. "We could use that equipment shed as cover while we figure out the best way forward." The team regrouped behind the shed, and Johnson gratefully accepted their input as he tried to develop a new plan. Sarah provided subtle guidance by asking strategic questions rather than giving direct answers, helping the team work through the tactical problems themselves. "What's our primary objective right now?" she asked, helping focus their discussion. "Get back to the start point with the intelligence package," Johnson replied, regaining some of his composure. "And what resources do we have available?" Thompson added. Following Sarah's lead in working through the problem systematically through this collaborative approach, the team developed a viable extraction plan that avoided most of the enemy positions, while maintaining security for their valuable intelligence package. Sarah was pleased that she had been able to contribute meaningfully without revealing her advanced training. As they began their final approach to the extraction point, Rodriguez continued his observation from multiple angles. Something about Team Bravo's performance had definitely caught his attention, though Sarah couldn't determine what specifically had triggered his interest. The team successfully completed their mission within the designated time limit, earning praise from Chief Williams for their adaptability and teamwork. Sarah felt a sense of satisfaction at having helped her teammates succeed while maintaining her cover identity perfectly. However, as they walked back toward the debriefing area, she noticed Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez studying her more intently than before. His expression was thoughtful rather than suspicious, but it was clear that something about her performance had registered on his radar. Sarah maintained her relaxed demeanor, while internally preparing for the possibility that her cover might face more scrutiny in the coming exercises. The debriefing session took place in a sterile conference room overlooking the training grounds. Chief Williams had arranged the chairs in a circle, creating an atmosphere that encouraged open discussion about the afternoon's exercises. Sarah sat quietly among her teammates, maintaining the demeanor of a sailor who had performed adequately but without distinction. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez entered the room carrying a thick folder of observation notes. His presence immediately shifted the atmosphere from casual to formal. The sailors straightened in their chairs, recognizing that this debriefing would carry more weight than the usual post-exercise discussions. "Today's scenarios were designed to test your ability to adapt under pressure," Rodriguez began, his voice carrying the authority of years of command experience. "Some teams performed exactly as expected. Others surprised us either positively or negatively." He moved around the circle, addressing each team's performance with specific observations. Sarah listened carefully as he provided feedback to the other groups, noting his attention to detail and his ability to identify both strengths and weaknesses in their tactical approaches. When Rodriguez reached Team Bravo, his gaze lingered on Sarah for a moment before addressing the group as a whole. "Your team showed interesting dynamics during the intelligence retrieval scenario. Johnson, your initial leadership was tentative, but you improved as the exercise progressed. What changed?" Johnson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Well, sir, my teammates provided good input that helped me think through the problems more clearly." "Specifically, what kind of input?" Rodriguez pressed, clearly fishing for more detailed information. Martinez spoke up. "We talked through the tactical situation together, sir. Everyone contributed ideas about the best approaches." Rodriguez's attention turned to Sarah. "Chun, you seem particularly effective at asking the right questions to guide your team's decision-making. Where did you develop those analytical skills?" Sarah felt her pulse quicken slightly, but her expression remained calm and professional. "During my communications training, sir, we learned the importance of gathering complete information before making decisions. I guess those habits carried over into the tactical scenarios." "Interesting," Rodriguez replied, making a note in his folder. "Your communications background doesn't typically include tactical analysis. What specific courses covered that material?" The question was more pointed than Sarah had expected. She needed to provide an answer that would satisfy his curiosity without creating inconsistencies in her cover story. "We studied information flow and decision-making processes, sir." The instructors emphasized how asking the right questions could prevent communication breakdowns during critical operations. Rodriguez nodded slowly, apparently satisfied with her explanation. However, Sarah noticed that he continued to observe her throughout the remainder of the debriefing. His interest wasn't necessarily suspicious, but it represented a level of attention that could complicate her mission if it continued. As the debriefing concluded, Chief Williams announced the schedule for the following day's training. The exercises would focus on individual combat skills, including hand-to-hand combat techniques and weapons handling. Sarah realized this would present her greatest challenge yet in maintaining her cover identity. After the official session ended, the sailors began filing out of the conference room. Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave, but Rodriguez's voice stopped her at the door. "Chun, a word, please." Her teammates continued out of the room, leaving Sarah alone with the lieutenant commander. She turned to face him, maintaining a respectful but relaxed posture that suggested she had no reason to be concerned about a private conversation. "Yes, sir?" Rodriguez studied her for a moment before speaking. "Your performance today was notable. Not flashy, but effective. You have good instincts for tactical thinking." "Thank you, sir. I try to stay focused during training exercises." "Where are you from originally?" he asked, seemingly shifting to more casual conversation. "San Diego, sir. I grew up near the naval base there. Family in the military?" Sarah had prepared for questions about her background, but she needed to be careful not to create details that could be easily verified or contradicted. "My father was a Marine, sir. He taught me to pay attention to details and think things through before acting." "That explains some of your analytical approach," Rodriguez said, nodding approvingly. "What made you choose communications as your specialty?" "I was always good with technology, sir, and I liked the idea of supporting operations by maintaining critical communication links." Rodriguez seemed satisfied with her responses, but Sarah could tell he was filing away every detail for future reference. His questioning style suggested someone who was naturally curious about the people under his command, rather than someone who suspected her of deception. "Well, keep up the good work. Chun, tomorrow's exercises will be more physically demanding. Make sure you get adequate rest tonight." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." Sarah left the conference room and walked toward the barracks, her mind racing as she considered the implications of Rodriguez's increased interest. She needed to find a way to manage her performance during the combat training without either seeming incompetent or revealing her advanced skills. The barracks were bustling with activity as sailors prepared for evening chow and personal time. Sarah's teammates were discussing the day's exercises, replaying their successes and analyzing their mistakes. She joined their conversation naturally, contributing observations that supported her cover identity while gathering information about the base's operations and personnel. "What do you think tomorrow's hand-to-hand combat training will be like?" Martinez asked, clearly nervous about the prospect of physical confrontation. "Probably basic techniques," Thompson replied. "Most of these assessment programs focus on fundamentals rather than advanced skills." Sarah nodded in agreement. "The instructors will probably emphasize proper form and safety procedures. They want to evaluate our ability to learn and apply basic combat principles." Her response was perfectly calibrated to suggest competence without expertise. However, she knew that maintaining this balance during actual physical combat would be exponentially more difficult than it had been during the tactical scenarios. As the evening progressed, Sarah excused herself from the group activities and found a quiet corner where she could review her mission parameters. The training exercise was scheduled to continue for another 3 days, and she needed to gather specific intelligence about base security procedures and personnel assignments. Her primary objective remained unchanged: observe and document the integration protocols between special operations personnel and regular military units. However, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's growing interest in her performance represented a new variable that could complicate her mission if not managed carefully. Sarah spent time reviewing her cover story, ensuring that all the details remained consistent and verifiable within reasonable limits. She also considered various strategies for managing her performance during combat training, weighing the risks of appearing too skilled against the risks of seeming incompetent. The next morning would bring new challenges, and she needed to be prepared for scenarios that would test not only her ability to maintain her cover, but also her physical and mental discipline under direct observation. Rodriguez's attention had elevated the stakes considerably, transforming what should have been a routine intelligence gathering mission into a delicate balancing act. As lights out approached, Sarah settled into her assigned bunk, surrounded by the quiet conversations and settling sounds of her fellow sailors. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, using meditation techniques to maintain the calm mental state that would be essential for navigating the challenges ahead. Tomorrow would test her skills in ways that the tactical scenarios never could, and failure was not an option. Dawn arrived with the sharp blast of the reveille horn, cutting through the quiet barracks like a knife. Sarah was already awake, having risen 15 minutes early to center herself for the day's challenges. Around her, the other sailors stirred and began the familiar routine of preparing for another day of training. The morning air was crisp as the sailors assembled on the parade ground for physical training. Chief Williams stood at the front of the formation, his breath visible in small puffs as he outlined the day's schedule. Hand-to-hand combat training would begin after a warm-up run in calisthenics, followed by weapons familiarization and tactical shooting exercises. Sarah fell into the rhythm of the morning PT routine, consciously matching the pace and intensity of her fellow sailors. The 3-mile run tested everyone's endurance, and she had to resist the urge to surge ahead when the pace felt uncomfortably slow. Several sailors struggled with the distance, and she made a point of offering encouragement while staying well within her own capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez observed the PT session from various positions along the route, his keen eyes tracking the performance of individual sailors. Sarah noticed that his attention seemed to focus particularly on those who either excelled or struggled significantly. She made sure her performance remained firmly in the middle range of the group. After PT and breakfast, the sailors gathered at the combat training facility, a large gymnasium equipped with mats, practice weapons, and protective gear. The morning sunlight streamed through high windows, casting long rectangles of light across the training area. Instructors were setting up stations for different aspects of combat training. Chief Williams addressed the assembled sailors with his characteristic directness. Today we're going to cover basic hand-to-hand combat techniques. For some of you, this will be review. For others, it's going to be completely new. Everyone will participate regardless of their experience level. The sailors were divided into pairs based roughly on size and apparent experience level. Sarah found herself matched with Petty Officer Martinez, who had expressed nervousness about the combat training during their conversation the previous evening. This pairing actually worked in Sarah's favor, as it would allow her to appear helpful and competent without seeming overly skilled. "Don't worry," Sarah told Martinez quietly as they moved to their assigned mat. "The instructors will teach us everything step by step. It's more about learning proper technique than actual fighting." Martinez smiled gratefully. "I appreciate that. I've never done anything like this before. Growing up, my parents always emphasized avoiding fights rather than learning to fight." The first instructor, a muscular petty officer first class named Harrison, demonstrated basic defensive stances and blocking techniques. His movements were precise and controlled, clearly the result of extensive training and experience. Sarah absorbed every detail while maintaining the appearance of a student learning new material. "The key to effective defense is balance and timing," Harrison explained as he moved through the demonstration. "You don't need to be stronger than your opponent if you can use their momentum against them." When it came time to practice, Sarah worked carefully with Martinez, helping her learn the proper positioning while deliberately making minor mistakes that would be consistent with her cover identity. She provided gentle guidance and encouragement, establishing herself as a supportive partner rather than an expert instructor. "Remember to keep your center of gravity low," she suggested to Martinez, echoing the instructor's guidance rather than providing original insights. "And watch your opponent's shoulders for clues about their next move." From across the gymnasium, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez observed the various pairs as they practiced. His attention moved systematically from group to group, taking notes, and occasionally conferring with the instructors about individual performance. Sarah was aware of his presence, but avoided looking in his direction too frequently. The training progressed to basic offensive techniques, including proper punching form and simple takedown methods. Sarah found this phase particularly challenging, as her muscle memory wanted to execute movements with far more precision and power than would be appropriate for her cover identity. When practicing punching techniques with Martinez, Sarah had to consciously dial back her form to appear less polished. She allowed her stance to be slightly imperfect and her combinations to lack the fluid coordination that years of specialized training had ingrained in her reflexes. "That's pretty good," Martinez said after they had run through the sequence several times. "You're picking this up quickly." "Thanks," Sarah replied. "My dad taught me a little bit when I was younger. He always said it was important to know how to protect yourself." This response was carefully calculated to explain any natural ability she might display while still maintaining her cover as someone with limited formal training. The reference to her fictional father also reinforced the background story she had established with Rodriguez the previous day. As the morning progressed, the exercises became more dynamic, incorporating movement and defensive reactions to simulated attacks. Sarah found herself working with different partners as the instructors rotated the pairs to expose everyone to various fighting styles and approaches. When she was paired with Thompson, a quiet sailor who had shown good tactical instincts during the previous day's exercises, she discovered that he had some previous martial arts experience. This created an interesting dynamic where she needed to appear competent enough to work with him effectively while not revealing the true extent of her abilities. "You've done some training before, haven't you?" Thompson asked as they practiced escape techniques from various holds. Sarah nodded casually. "A little bit here and there, nothing formal." "What about you?" "I studied karate for a few years in high school," he replied. It's interesting to see how different systems approach the same problems. Their practice session proceeded smoothly, with both sailors demonstrating competence without standing out from the overall group. Sarah was pleased to find that Thompson's experience actually helped camouflage her own skills, as their exchanges appeared to be the result of two moderately trained individuals working together. However, this dynamic caught the attention of one of the instructors, who began observing their practice more closely. Sarah noticed the increased scrutiny and made subtle adjustments to her performance, introducing small imperfections that would make her appear less polished. The mid-morning break provided an opportunity for the sailors to rest and hydrate before moving on to more advanced techniques. Sarah used this time to observe the overall training environment and gather intelligence about the base's security procedures, which was part of her actual mission. She noticed the rotation schedule for the instructors, the protocols for equipment handling, and the communication procedures used to coordinate the various training activities. All of this information would be valuable for her final report, assuming she could complete the training exercise without compromising her cover. As the break ended, Chief Williams announced that the afternoon session would include more intensive combat scenarios, including multiple attacker situations and confined space fighting techniques. Sarah realized that these advanced exercises would present her greatest challenge yet in maintaining her carefully constructed identity. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had positioned himself near the main training area where he could observe all the afternoon activities. His presence served as a constant reminder that Sarah was under scrutiny, even if that scrutiny wasn't necessarily suspicious in nature. The afternoon training began with scenarios designed to simulate real-world confrontations that sailors might encounter during shore leave or other situations where formal weapons weren't available. The exercises required participants to think tactically while applying the physical techniques they had learned during the morning session. Sarah approached these challenges with the same careful balance she had maintained throughout the training. She needed to appear competent and confident without revealing the advanced, tactical knowledge that could only come from specialized military training far beyond what a communications specialist would normally receive. The afternoon combat scenarios intensified as Chief Williams introduced more complex situations designed to test the sailors' ability to apply their morning training under pressure. The gymnasium had been reconfigured with obstacles and barriers to simulate confined spaces where traditional fighting techniques might need to be modified. Sarah found herself assigned to a scenario that required her to navigate through a mock ship corridor while dealing with multiple simulated attackers. The exercise was designed to replicate the kind of close quarters combat that might occur during boarding operations or facility security situations. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had moved to an elevated observation platform that provided him with a clear view of all the training stations. His attention seemed particularly focused on the more challenging scenarios, and Sarah was acutely aware that her performance would be under direct scrutiny. The first attacker in her scenario was played by Instructor Harrison, who had demonstrated the morning's techniques. He positioned himself at a narrow choke point in the simulated corridor, forcing Sarah to either retreat or find a way to neutralize the threat and continue her mission objective of reaching the far end of the course. Sarah approached the situation with calculated caution, appearing to assess her options carefully while actually running through multiple tactical solutions in her mind. She needed to select an approach that would be effective but not so sophisticated that it would raise questions about her training background. Remember, you have limited space to maneuver, Harrison called out, staying in character as the threatening opponent. Use the techniques we practiced this morning, but adapt them to the environment. Sarah engaged with Harrison using basic defensive moves, allowing him to pressure her initially before executing a simple but effective counter technique that created enough space for her to continue down the corridor. Her execution was clean but not flawless, incorporating small hesitations and adjustments that suggested someone applying newly learned skills rather than demonstrating ingrained expertise. The second attacker was positioned around a corner, requiring Sarah to deal with a surprise encounter while moving through the confined space. This scenario tested her ability to react quickly while maintaining awareness of her surroundings, skills that were fundamental to special operations training but also relevant to general military preparedness. When the second attacker appeared, Sarah allowed herself to show a moment of surprise before responding with appropriate defensive measures. Her reaction time was good but not exceptional, and her technique showed the kind of adaptation that an intelligent sailor might develop when applying basic training to an unexpected situation. From his observation position, Rodriguez made notes about each participant's performance. He was particularly interested in how different sailors approached problem-solving under pressure, and he had begun to identify patterns in their responses that suggested different levels of underlying training or natural ability. Sarah's approach caught his attention because of its consistency. Unlike some sailors who performed well in some scenarios but poorly in others, her competence seemed steady across different challenges. This could indicate either natural aptitude or more extensive background preparation than her record suggested. The final challenge in Sarah's scenario involved multiple attackers working together, requiring her to use tactical thinking to avoid being overwhelmed. This was the most demanding part of the exercise, as it required participants to think several moves ahead while executing physical techniques under stress. Sarah approached this challenge by creating separation between the attackers, using the environment to her advantage in ways that demonstrated good tactical instincts without revealing advanced training. Her movements were purposeful but not overly sophisticated, showing the kind of creative problem-solving that instructors like to see from promising students. When she completed the scenario successfully, Chief Williams provided immediate feedback that was positive but not exceptional. Good adaptation to the environment. Chun, you showed solid problem-solving skills under pressure. Sarah thanked him for the feedback and moved to the sidelines to observe other sailors as they worked through their scenarios. This gave her an opportunity to study the overall training structure while appearing to be an engaged student learning from her peers' experiences. As the afternoon progressed, Rodriguez began conducting individual assessments with selected sailors. These brief one-on-one sessions appeared to focus on gathering more detailed information about participants' backgrounds and motivations. Sarah realized that being selected for such an assessment could either validate her cover identity or expose inconsistencies that might compromise her mission. When Rodriguez called her name for an individual assessment, Sarah felt her pulse quicken slightly, but her expression remained calm and professional. She approached his position with the confident but respectful bearing appropriate for a petty officer's second-class meeting with a lieutenant commander. "Chun, let's talk about your performance today," Rodriguez began, gesturing for her to sit in a chair positioned across from his small assessment table. "Overall, you've shown consistent competence across different types of challenges." "Thank you, sir. I've been trying to apply the instruction we've received and learn from the scenarios." Rodriguez consulted his notes before continuing. "Your background is listed as communication specialty, but you seem to have good instincts for tactical thinking. Have you had any additional training beyond your regular Navy schools?" This was exactly the kind of probing question Sarah had been preparing for since the beginning of the exercise. Her response needed to be detailed enough to be credible while remaining consistent with her established cover story. "Not formal tactical training, sir," she replied carefully. "But my father emphasized the importance of situational awareness and thinking ahead. He used to say that good Marines survived because they never stopped analyzing their environment." "Tell me more about your father's influence on your development." Sarah had anticipated this line of questioning and had prepared biographical details that would support her cover identity. "He served 3 tours overseas, sir, 2 in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. When he came home, he was very focused on teaching me practical skills for staying safe and thinking clearly under pressure." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "That explains some of what I've observed. Military families often produce children with good instincts for discipline and tactical thinking, even when they pursue different career paths." The assessment continued with questions about her career goals, her reasons for choosing the Navy, and her experiences during basic training and technical schools. Sarah answered each question honestly within the context of her cover identity, providing details that painted a picture of a competent and motivated sailor with family connections to military service. "One more question, Chun," Rodriguez said as the assessment neared its conclusion. "If you had the opportunity to pursue more advanced training in tactical skills, would that interest you?" The question carried implications that Sarah needed to consider carefully. Expressing too much interest might lead to opportunities that could compromise her mission, while showing too little interest might seem inconsistent with the competence she had displayed. "I think any additional training that would make me a more effective sailor would be valuable, sir," she replied diplomatically. "But I'm also committed to excelling in my communications specialty and supporting my unit's mission requirements." Rodriguez seemed satisfied with her response and made a final note in his assessment folder. "Keep up the good work, Chun. You have potential that could be developed with the right opportunities." As Sarah returned to the main training area, she reflected on the assessment conversation. Rodriguez's questions had been thorough but not suspicious, suggesting that his interest in her performance was based on professional evaluation rather than concerns about her identity. However, his mention of advanced training opportunities represented a new factor that could complicate her mission if not managed carefully. The training day concluded with a group debrief session, where Chief Williams and the other instructors provided feedback about overall performance and areas for improvement. Sarah contributed to the discussion by asking thoughtful questions and sharing observations that demonstrated engagement without revealing expertise. As the sailors prepared to return to the barracks, Rodriguez approached Sarah once more. "Chun, I'd like you to participate in a special exercise tomorrow morning. Report to Building 7 at 0600 for additional assessment." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied. Though she felt a surge of concern about what this special exercise might entail, Rodriguez provided no additional details. leaving Sarah to wonder whether this development represented an opportunity to gather more intelligence or a potential threat to her mission, security. As she walked back to the barracks with her fellow sailors, she began planning for various scenarios that might await her in the morning. The pre-dawn darkness enveloped Naval Station Norfolk as Sarah made her way to Building 7, her footsteps echoing softly on the empty walkways. The building stood apart from the main training facilities, its darkened windows revealing nothing about what awaited inside. She had spent much of the previous night analyzing possible scenarios for this special exercise. But Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's instructions had been deliberately vague. Sarah arrived precisely at 600. Her uniform immaculate and her bearing professional despite the early hour. The building's entrance was locked, but within moments she heard footsteps approaching from inside. Chief Williams opened the door, his expression serious in the pale light from the corridor. "Chun, good morning. Come in." The interior of Building 7 was configured differently than the standard training facilities she had seen during the previous days. The main room contained specialized equipment that suggested more advanced combat training, including tactical simulators and what appeared to be live-fire ranges configured for close-quarters scenarios. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez emerged from an office adjoining the main room, carrying a thick folder and wearing an expression that was more intense than she had seen during the regular training sessions. His demeanor suggested that this exercise carried more significance than routine skill assessment. "Shin. Thank you for being prompt," Rodriguez said, gesturing for her to follow him toward a briefing area set up with chairs facing a large tactical display screen. This morning's exercise is designed to evaluate sailors with potential for advanced training opportunities. Sarah took a seat in the front row, noting that she appeared to be the only participant in whatever was about to unfold. This individual attention could either represent an exceptional opportunity to gather intelligence, or a serious threat to her mission's security, depending on what Rodriguez had planned. "Before we begin," Rodriguez continued, "I want to emphasize that everything you see and do this morning is classified at the confidential level. You're not to discuss any details with other personnel, including the sailors in your regular training group. Understood?" "Sir," Sarah replied, though she felt her level of alertness increase significantly. The security classification suggested that this exercise involved more sensitive material than the routine training she had been participating in. Rodriguez activated the tactical display, which showed a detailed layout of what appeared to be a ship's interior spaces. The diagram included multiple levels, narrow corridors, and various compartments that would present significant challenges for anyone conducting operations in such an environment. This exercise simulates a boarding operation where intelligence personnel need to be extracted from a hostile vessel, Rodriguez explained, using a laser pointer to highlight key features of the layout. The scenario requires tactical thinking, adaptability, and the ability to operate effectively in confined spaces under pressure. Sarah studied the display carefully, her mind automatically analyzing the tactical challenges while maintaining the appearance of a communications specialist trying to understand an unfamiliar operational scenario. The layout was complex enough to require advanced planning and execution skills that would be difficult to fake convincingly. "Your role will be to reach this compartment," Rodriguez continued, indicating a location deep within the simulated vessel's structure, retrieve a package representing critical intelligence, and return to the extraction point within 30 minutes. The mission parameters were clearly designed to test capabilities that went well beyond basic combat training. Sarah realized that Rodriguez must suspect something about her background to have selected her for such an advanced exercise. Her challenge would be to perform competently without revealing her true level of expertise. "Sir, I appreciate being selected for this exercise," Sarah said carefully, "but I'm not sure my training has prepared me for such an advanced scenario. My experience is primarily in communications systems rather than tactical operations." Rodriguez studied her expression for a moment before responding. "That's exactly why this exercise is valuable, Chin," We need to understand how personnel with different specialties adapt when faced with unfamiliar challenges. Your performance will help us design better cross-training programs." His explanation sounded reasonable, but Sarah detected an undertone that suggested this exercise was about more than program development. Rodriguez's questions during the previous day's assessment had shown unusual interest in her background and capabilities, and this individual exercise felt like a more intensive form of that investigation. Chief Williams had been setting up equipment in the adjacent room during Rodriguez's briefing. He returned carrying protective gear and what appeared to be simulated weapons designed for training scenarios. The level of realism was significantly higher than anything Sarah had encountered during the regular group training. "The exercise area replicates the ship layout you see on the display," Williams explained as he helped Sarah adjust the protective gear. "You'll encounter various challenges designed to simulate the conditions you might face during an actual boarding operation." Sarah accepted the simulated weapon and quickly familiarized herself with its operation, taking care to handle it with the competence of someone who had received basic weapons training without appearing overly proficient. The weapon's weight and balance felt familiar, but she made sure to take a few moments to check its basic functions as someone less experienced might do. "Any questions about the mission parameters or equipment?" Rodriguez asked, observing her preparation carefully. "What are the rules of engagement for this scenario, sir?" Sarah asked, demonstrating appropriate concern for proper procedures while gathering information about the exercise structure. "Treat all opposition as hostile but use minimum necessary force," Rodriguez replied. "Your primary objective is mission completion rather than neutralizing threats. Tactical withdrawal is preferable to unnecessary confrontation." These parameters actually favored Sarah's approach of maintaining her cover while completing the exercise successfully. She could focus on stealth and avoidance rather than combat techniques that might reveal her advanced training. The mission design suggested that Rodriguez was more interested in evaluating her decision-making and adaptability than her fighting skills. Williams led her to the exercise area, which had been configured to replicate the ship's interior with remarkable detail. Narrow corridors, low overheads, and complex intersections created an environment that would challenge even experienced personnel. The lighting was dim, adding another layer of difficulty to navigation and threat assessment. "Timer starts when you enter the main corridor," Williams announced, positioning himself at a control station where he could monitor her progress through the exercise. "Remember, you have 30 minutes to complete the mission." Sarah approached the entrance to the simulated vessel, taking a moment to review the layout she had memorized from the briefing display. Her route planning needed to appear thoughtful but not overly sophisticated, showing good analytical skills, without revealing tactical expertise that would be inconsistent with her cover identity. As she entered the exercise area, Sarah immediately noticed the quality of the simulation. The environment felt authentically confined and challenging, with realistic details that suggested significant investment in creating accurate training conditions. This level of sophistication indicated that Building 7 was used for more advanced training than she had initially realized. The first corridor presented navigation challenges that required careful movement to avoid simulated detection systems. Sarah approached these obstacles with measured caution, taking time to assess each situation while moving efficiently toward her objective. Her progress was steady but not exceptional, consistent with someone applying basic training principles to an unfamiliar environment from the control station. Rodriguez tracked her movement through the exercise via monitoring systems that provided real-time updates on her position and progress. His attention was focused entirely on her performance, analyzing every decision and action for insights into her true capabilities and background. As Sarah navigated deeper into the simulated vessel, she encountered increasingly complex challenges that tested her ability to adapt under pressure while maintaining mission focus. Each obstacle required her to balance effectiveness with the need to avoid revealing skills that would be inconsistent with her cover identity, creating a delicate performance that demanded constant attention to detail. The exercise was designed to push participants beyond their comfort zones while revealing their true capabilities under stress. For Sarah, it represented the ultimate test of her ability to maintain her cover identity while completing a mission that demanded the very skills she was trying to conceal. Sarah moved through the simulated vessel with calculated precision, each step carefully measured to appear competent but not expert. She had successfully navigated the first 2 levels of the complex layout, and was approaching the compartment containing her objective when she encountered the most challenging obstacle yet. A simulated guard patrol blocking the critical corridor. Through her peripheral vision, she could see movement patterns that suggested multiple opponents working in coordination. The scenario had escalated beyond basic navigation to active threat management, requiring her to make tactical decisions that would inevitably reveal aspects of her true capabilities. From the control room, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez watched intently as Sarah approached this crucial test. His earlier observations had suggested that she possessed skills beyond her official training record, and this scenario was designed to force those capabilities into the open. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would provide definitive answers about Petty Officer Chun's real background. Sarah paused at the corridor junction, appearing to assess her options while actually running through multiple tactical solutions. She could attempt stealth bypass, create a distraction, or engage directly. Each approach carried risks of revealing her true skill level, but mission completion required her to select the most viable option regardless of the consequences to her cover. The direct approach seemed most consistent with what a communications specialist might attempt under pressure. Sarah moved forward with determination, relying on the basic combat techniques she had demonstrated during the previous day's training. Her execution was clean but deliberately imperfect, showing the adaptation of recently learned skills rather than ingrained expertise. The first simulated opponent appeared from behind a bulkhead partition, moving to intercept her advance toward the objective compartment. Sarah engaged using defensive techniques, allowing the opponent to maintain pressure initially before executing a counter-move that created enough space for her to continue her mission. However, as she dealt with the first opponent, a second figure emerged from a concealed position, moving to flank her from the left side. The tactical situation had become significantly more complex, requiring rapid decision-making and the kind of situational awareness that came only from extensive combat training. Sarah's response was instinctive and immediate. Without thinking, she pivoted into a defensive position that provided optimal coverage against multiple attackers while maintaining mobility for either engagement or withdrawal. Her movement was fluid and precise, executed with the kind of muscle memory that could only result from years of specialized training. The moment her body completed the movement, Sarah realized her mistake. The tactical positioning she had assumed was far too sophisticated for someone with her supposed background. No communications specialist, regardless of family military influence or natural aptitude, would execute such an advanced defensive maneuver without extensive formal training. From the control room, Rodriguez saw exactly what Sarah had hoped to conceal. Her response to the multi-attacker scenario had revealed tactical knowledge and physical capability that were completely inconsistent with her official record. The fluid precision of her movement spoke of special operations training at the highest levels. Sarah attempted to recover by introducing hesitation into her subsequent actions, but the damage was already done. She had revealed her true nature in a moment of instinctive response to a tactical threat. The remainder of the exercise became an academic exercise as she completed her mission parameters while knowing that her cover identity had been fundamentally compromised. She retrieved the simulated intelligence package from the designated compartment and began her extraction route, moving with the same deliberately moderated competence she had maintained throughout most of the exercise. But both she and Rodriguez knew that everything had changed in those few seconds of tactical revelation. When Sarah emerged from the exercise area, Rodriguez was waiting with an expression that combined professional satisfaction with stern authority. Chief Williams stood beside him, holding a folder that Sarah suspected contained her real personnel file rather than the fabricated communications specialist record. Impressive performance? Chun, Rodriguez said, his tone carrying implications that went well beyond the exercise parameters. Especially your response to the multi-attacker scenario. That was some very advanced tactical thinking for a communications specialist. Sarah maintained her composure despite knowing that her mission had taken a dramatic turn. Thank you, sir. I tried to apply the training from yesterday and adapt to the situation as it developed. Rodriguez studied her for a long moment before responding. The level of tactical sophistication you demonstrated suggests training that goes well beyond basic Navy schools. Would you care to explain where you acquired such advanced combat skills? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications for both Sarah's mission and her future. She could attempt to maintain her cover with increasingly implausible explanations, or she could acknowledge what Rodriguez had clearly already determined about her real identity. Sir, I think there may be some confusion about my training background, she replied carefully, still hoping to salvage some aspect of her mission parameters. No confusion at all, Rodriguez said firmly. Chief Williams, would you please show Petty Officer Chun her actual personnel file? Williams opened the folder and displayed documents that revealed Sarah's true identity as a Navy SEAL, with extensive special operations experience. Her stomach sank as she realized that her cover had been penetrated from the very beginning of the exercise, transforming what she thought was an intelligence-gathering mission into an elaborate test of her abilities. We've been aware of your real identity since you arrived on base. Chief Petty Officer Chun, Rodriguez continued, using her actual rank for the first time. This entire training exercise was designed to evaluate how effectively special operations personnel can integrate with regular military units while maintaining operational security. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and embarrassment as the true nature of her situation became clear. Her mission hadn't been compromised by her performance. Rather, her performance had been the actual mission all along. The elaborate cover identity and carefully moderated capabilities had been part of a test scenario designed to evaluate integration protocols. The question now, Rodriguez said, is whether your cover identity was convincing enough to fool personnel who weren't briefed on your real background? From my observations, you maintained your deception effectively until the final tactical scenario forced you to choose between mission completion and operational security. Sarah nodded, recognizing the validity of his assessment. The multi-attacker situation created a tactical imperative that overrode my cover maintenance protocols, sir. Exactly, Rodriguez replied with approval. That's precisely the kind of real-world challenge that these integration exercises are designed to identify and address. Your performance provides valuable data for improving future operations where special operations personnel need to work alongside regular military units. Chief. Williams closed the personnel file and handed Sarah a different set of documents. These are your actual mission parameters. Chief, your performance during the exercise has been excellent, and your insights will be valuable for refining the integration protocols. As Sarah reviewed the documents, she realized that her careful balancing act between competence and concealment had been exactly what the exercise was designed to evaluate. Her momentary lapse in the final scenario wasn't a failure, but rather a crucial data point about the limits of maintaining cover identity. Under extreme tactical pressure, there's one more aspect of this exercise that needs to be addressed, Rodriguez said, his expression becoming more serious. During your cover identity phase, you demonstrated the ability to provide tactical guidance to your teammates without revealing your true expertise. That skill could be invaluable for future operations requiring special operations personnel to serve as unofficial advisors to regular military units. Sarah considered the implications of his observation. The ability to enhance unit effectiveness while maintaining operational security could indeed prove valuable for various mission scenarios. Her experience during the team exercises had shown that subtle guidance could significantly improve tactical decision-making without compromising cover identities. I'd recommend that aspect of your performance be included in the after-action report, Rodriguez continued. The ability to serve as a force multiplier, while maintaining cover is a capability that could be developed and formalized for future operations. As the debrief session concluded, Sarah reflected on the complexity of the exercise she had just completed. What had seemed like a straightforward intelligence gathering mission had actually been an elaborate evaluation of integration capabilities, testing not only her ability to maintain cover, but also her effectiveness at enhancing unit performance while concealed among regular personnel.